Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quiz Class. Today we have a fun 100-question quiz on 60s music. So let's get ready and test your knowledge. Question 1. What artist sang Theme from a Summer Place, the #1 Billboard year-end single of 1960? Jim Reeves, Percy Faith, or Johnny Preston? Percy Faith. Which song hit #1 twice, first in 1960 and again in 1962? Stuck on You by Elvis Presley, Wonderful World Sam Cooke, or The Twist, Chubby Checker? The Twist by Chubby Checker. Which composer scored 5 James Bond films during the 1960s? George Martin, John Barry, or Monty Norman? John Barry. What band did visual artist Andy Warhol become the manager of in 1966? The Who, Cream, or the Velvet Underground? The Velvet Underground. What was the Dutch 1964 Radio Noordees an example of? Pirate radio, bootleg recording, or college broadcasting? That's Noordzee. Pirate radio. What two musical styles directly influenced 1960s Baroque pop? Pop and classical, rock and classical, or rockabilly and classical? Rock and classical. What artist joined the folk rock supergroup stylized as CSN in 1969? Neil Young, Yoko Ono, or Yusuf Islam? Neil Young. Who was commonly referred to as the fifth Beatle? Bob Dylan, Billy Preston, or George Martin? George Martin. Which two songwriters wrote Up on the Roof, first recorded by the Drifters in 1962? The Sherman Brothers, Jerry Goffin and Carole King, or Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich? Jerry Goffin and Carole King. What music-led cultural event is considered to have started in February 1964? The hippie era, the British invasion, or the swinging 60s? The British invasion. Which artist sang Tossin' and Turnin', the #1 Billboard year-end single of 1961? Del Shannon, Bobby Lewis, or Joe Dowell? Bobby Lewis. Which duo nicknamed Double Dynamite released Hold On I'm Comin' in 1966? Sam and Dan, Sam and Doug, or Sam and Dave? Sam and Dave. Which artist is a standout member of the 1960s group The Mothers of Invention? Frank Zappa, Jimi Hendrix, or Jimmy Vaughn? Frank Zappa. Which musical based on Charles Dickens' work debuted on London's Broadway in 1960? Great Expectations, A Christmas Carol, or Oliver? Oliver. Founded in 1968, what is the name of Curtis Mayfield's record label? Mayfield Records, CM Records, or Curtum Records? Curtum Records. Which folk singer's self-titled debut record was released in 1960? Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, or Janis Joplin? Joan Baez. Which song is not a 1960s release of the psychedelic genre? Incense and Peppermints, Hot Smoke and Sassafras, or I Love You, Honey Bear? I Love You, Honey Bear. What song did the Wild Ones record in 1965 that became a 1966 #1 for another artist? Wild Thing, The Arthur Sound, or Angel of the Morning? Wild Thing. Which song won the Grammy Record of the Year award in 1965? A Hard Day's Night, The Girl from Ipanema, or Fly Me to the Moon? The Girl from Ipanema. Question 20. Which actor released an album with the partial name Sings Cowboy Favorites in 1963? Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, or Clint Eastwood? Clint Eastwood. Which artist sang Stranger on the Shore, the #1 Billboard year-end single of 1962? Acker Bilk, Bobby Vinton, or Neil Sedaka? Acker Bilk. Which musical group made their debut at Redcliffe Speedway in 1960? Cold Chisel, Bee Gees, or AC/DC? The Bee Gees. What nationality is singer Lulu, who made the 1967 #1 to Sir with Love? Welsh, Irish, or Scottish? Scottish. What is the 1960s Nueva Ola genre an example of? Spanish rock and roll, Argentinian rock and roll, or Portuguese rock and roll? Argentinian rock and roll. Which song is not a Sonny and Cher 1965 hit? The Beat Goes On, I Got You Babe, or Baby Don't Go? The Beat Goes On. Which 1960s song was not a B-side released by the original artist? Blowin' in the Wind, God Only Knows, or I Am the Walrus? Blowin' in the Wind. How many 1960s Billboard year-end single #1s did Elvis Presley achieve? 0, 2, or 4? 0. Where did the quartet The Mamas and the Papas form in the mid-1960s? In New York, California, or Tennessee? In New York. What song did Burt Bacharach and Hal David write for the 1966 film of the same name? Archie, Andy, or Alfie? Alfie. Which fellow 60s act hasn't covered the Drifters' hit 1964 single, Under the Boardwalk? Johnny Cash, Bette Midler, or John Mellencamp? Johnny Cash. Which two songs did the Beach Boys chart in the Billboard year-end single list of 1963? Surfer Girl and Little Duce Coupe, Surfin' USA and Shut Down, or Wendy and I Get Around? Surfin' USA and Shut Down. Which American rock band originally formed as My Backyard in 1964? Lynyrd Skynyrd, ZZ Top, or the Allman Brothers Band? Lynyrd Skynyrd. Who stumbles upon a valuable gem in the 1965 Beatles musical film Help? Ringo, Paul, or George? Ringo. Which New York City neighborhood was considered the epicenter of 1960s music? Harlem, Bushwick, or Greenwich Village? Greenwich Village. Which two brothers covered Unchained Melody in 1965? The Everly Brothers, the Righteous Brothers, or the Keane Brothers, The Righteous Brothers. What is the stage name of the 1960s singing star Mary Isabel Catherine Bernadette O'Brien? Cilla Black, Dusty Springfield, or Carly Simon? Dusty Springfield. Who did Mick Taylor replace in the Rolling Stones in 1969? Brian Jones, Brian May, or Tom Jones? Brian Jones. Which act was the leading force in the 1960s psychedelic funk scene? Sly and the Family Stone, the Parliaments, or the Horny Horns? Sly and the Family Stone. Which two Simon and Garfunkel songs recorded in the 1960s won Grammy Record of the Year awards? Mrs. Robinson in America, Homeward Bound, and Bridge Over Troubled Water, or Mrs. Robinson and Bridge Over Troubled Water? Mrs. Robinson and Bridge Over Troubled Water. How many consecutive #1 songs did the Supremes have between 1964 and 1965? 3, 5, or 7? 5. Which Louis Armstrong song was #3 in the 1964 Billboard year-end single list? Cabaret, What a Wonderful World, or Hello Dolly? Hello Dolly. Which musical variety television show debuted in 1963? The Judy Garland Show, The Andy Williams Show, or The Dean Martin Show? The Judy Garland Show. Which woman did not appear in any 1960s Leonard Cohen single titles? So Long Marianne, Suzanne, or Joan of Arc? Joan of Arc. What completes the official title of Loretta Lynn's 1967 #1 single, Don't Come Home a Drinkin'? With Lovin' on Your Mind, with Holdin' Me on Your Mind, or with Drivin' on Your Mind? With Lovin' on Your Mind. What was the first Pink Floyd studio album released in 1967? A Saucer Full of Secrets, Uma Guma, or The Piper at the Gates of Dawn? The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Question 46. What instrument did Rod Stewart busk with to start his music career in 1962? The harmonica, his voice, or the tambourine? The harmonica. Which Elvis Presley song was written for him to perform in the 1965 film Girl Happy? Bird on a Wire, Puppet on a String, or Man on a Tightrope? Puppet on a String. Which bossa nova song did Frank Sinatra record in 1969? Dance, Wave, or Jump? Wave. What type of instrumentalist was 1960s musician and artist Yoko Ono? A violinist, a pianist, or a cellist? A pianist. What 1960s music production style is Phil Spector credited for? World of Sound, Wave of Sound, or Wall of Sound? Wall of Sound. Which artist sang Wooly Bully, the #1 Billboard year-end single of 1965? Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, Sam the Sham and the Comics, or Sam the Sham and the Illusionists? Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. What sound does the 1960s rock group Jefferson Airplane define? San Francisco Sound, Santa Clara Sound, or Sausalito Sound? San Francisco Sound. What type of animal quartet sings We're Your Friends in the 1967 musical comedy film The Jungle Book? Vultures, sloths, or toucans? Vultures. Which group wasn't guitarist Eric Clapton a member of in the 1960s? The Jeff Beck Group, Cream, or the Yardbirds? The Jeff Beck Group. Which festival, held between 1967 and 1969, has been credited with inspiring Woodstock? Memphis Cultural Festival, Austin Cultural Festival, or Harlem Cultural Festival? The Harlem Cultural Festival. Which country artist began his solo career with Rhymes and Reasons in 1969? James Taylor, John Denver, or Kenny Rogers? John Denver. Which singer transitioned from a sacred to a secular music career in 1960? Sam Cooke, Aretha Franklin, or Dizzy Gillespie? Aretha Franklin. Who was the original female vocalist with Marvin Gaye on the 1967 hit single Ain't No Mountain High Enough? Tammy Terrell, Diana Ross, or Tina Turner? Tammy Terrell. Which band formed in 1967 did James Newell Osterberg front? The Pogues, the Stooges, or the Troggs? The Stooges. Which singer-songwriter wrote the Monkees' 1966 single I'm a Believer? Barry Manilow, Tony Bennett, or Neil Diamond? Neil Diamond. Which 1963 film inspired Nancy Sinatra's 1966 hit, These Boots Are Made for Walkin'? McLintock, Four for Texas, or The Hallelujah Trail? Four for Texas. Question 62. Which 1963 album cover was artist Susie Rotolo photographed for? The Freewheelin', Bob Dylan, Tommy, or The World of Good and Plenty? The Freewheelin', Bob Dylan. Which West Hollywood nightclub was a career starting point for many 1960s musicians? The Echoplex, the Roxy Theater, or the Troubadour? The Troubadour. What is the 1963 Peter, Paul, and Mary song Puff the Magic Dragon written about? Marijuana, Loss of Innocence, or The Hobbit? Loss of Innocence. What genre of music was the 1960s group The Moody Blues? Rock and roll, metal, or prog rock? Prog rock. What was one of the original late 1960s names for the British band Queen? Smile, King, or Astro? Smile. What animal is the titular Mickey in the 1963 Miracle song Mickey's Monkey? A monkey, a penguin, or a cat? A cat. Members of which music group met in Dusseldorf in the late 1960s? Can, Tangerine Dream, or Kraftwerk? Kraftwerk. Which song won the 1966 Academy Award for Best Original Song for the film of the same name? George Earle, A Time for Love, or Born Free? Born Free. Which musical instrument's development is considered to have begun in 1964? The Korg synthesizer, the Moog synthesizer, or the Oberheim synthesizer? The Moog or Moog synthesizer. Which song spent 3 weeks as a Billboard #1 in 1967? The Box Tops, The Letter, the Rolling Stones' Ruby Tuesday, or the Doors' Light My Fire? The Doors with Light My Fire. Leading 1960s recording site RCA Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, had what formal name? RCA Studio A, RCA Studio B, or RCA Studio C? Studio B. In which U.S. state did rock band Creedence Clearwater Revival form in the 1960s? Idaho, Virginia, or California? In California. How many band members did Blood, Sweat, and Tears have when they debuted in 1968? 9, 11, or 13? 9. What was a leading theme of the musical Hair that debuted in 1967? An anti-Vietnam War, anti-segregation, or anti-hippie theme? Anti-Vietnam War theme. Which heavy metal band formed in Birmingham in 1969? Iron Maiden, Metallica, or Judas Priest? Judas Priest. Who sang the 1969 song La Chanson de Slogan with Serge Gainsbourg? Anna Karina, Jane Birkin, or Juliette Greco? Jane Birkin. What song did Tiny Tim cover in 1968? Livin' in the Sunlight, Lovin' in the Moonlight, Tiptoe Through the Tulips, or Great Balls of Fire? Tiptoe Through the Tulips. What song was used to capitalize on the 1969 moon landings? David Bowie's Space Odyssey, The Byrds' Mr. Spaceman, or The Beatles' Across the Universe? David Bowie's Space Odyssey. What country was ska music developed and popularized from in the 1960s? Cuba, Jamaica, or Senegal? Jamaica. Which artist had 4 songs on the 1968 Billboard year-end Hot 100 list? Dionne Warwick, James Brown, or Gary Puckett and the Union Gap? Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. What genre of music is the 1963 film theme for the Pink Panther? Rock and roll, doo-wop, or jazz big band? Jazz big band. Which hard rock band formed in Ireland in 1969? Whitesnake, Thin Lizzy, or Slade? Thin Lizzy. Question 84. Which singer did not become a 27 Club member in the 1960s? Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, or Janis Joplin? Jimi Hendrix. Which 1969 song was used for a 1986 film of the same name? Blue Moon, The Pied Piper, or Stand By Me? Stand By Me. Which musician performed in Flaming Youth in 1969 before joining Genesis in the 1970s? Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, or Tony Banks? Phil Collins. Who sang the titular Bye Bye Birdie in the 1963 musical? Daryl Hannah, Anne Margaret, or Janet Leigh? Anne Margaret. Starting in 1960, what did Ike and Tina Turner perform as? The Ike and Tina Turner Revue, the Duo, or the Entertainers? Ike and Tina Turner Revue. Who recorded the 1965 protest song, Eve of Destruction? The Cowsills, the Turtles, or the Vogues? The Turtles. Which musician got an industry break working as a doorman at the Heritage Coffee House in San Diego? Elvis Costello, T-Bone Burnett, or Tom Waits? Tom Waits. Which artist sang Sugar Sugar, the #1 Billboard year-end single of 1969? The Archies, the Foundations, or the Temptations? The Archies. Who did not contribute to the 1968 musical film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Roald Dahl, Cole Porter, or Ian Fleming? Cole Porter. In addition to vocals, what instrument does Steve Miller play in his eponymous band formed in 1966? Banjo, guitar, or bass guitar? The guitar. Which Harry Nilsson cover became a hit after featuring in the 1969 film Midnight Cowboy? 1. Everybody's Talkin', or I Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City? Everybody's Talkin'. Question 95. What song was a posthumous #1 hit for Otis Redding in 1968? Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, My Girl, or I Can't Get No Satisfaction? Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. Which conductor's music was featured in the 1961 film West Side Story? Aaron Copland's, Irving Berlin, or Leonard Bernstein? Leonard Bernstein. Which band achieved a UK #1 hit with their instrumental Albatross in 1968? Fleetwood Mac, The Shadows, or Percy Faith and his Orchestra? Fleetwood Mac. How many artists tied for the first place at the 1969 Eurovision Song Contest? 2, 3, or 4? 4. Which 1965 album did Phil Ochs close with the protest song Here's to the State of Mississippi? I Ain't Marching Anymore, All the News That's Fit to Sing, or Pleasures of the Harbor? I Ain't Marching Anymore. Last one. What was the Billboard best-selling album of 1969 in the US? The Jimi Hendrix Experience, Are You Experienced? Iron Butterfly, In-A-Gadda-Da-Da-Vida, or the Monkees, More of the Monkees? Iron Butterfly, In-A-Gadda-Da-Da-Vida. Bonus question, what 1964 film features the song Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious? Let us know the answer in the comments. Thanks for playing this quiz, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.